Yo, a lot of you seem to like the track that I used as a demonstration of clip launching on the MPC in my previous video. So today I'm doing a walkthrough of how I made kind of a driving peak time techno track on the MPC, starting with train sounds. All right, let's start this off with the foundation. We've got a kick from my $5 sample pack and a bass one shot, also from my $5 sample pack. I swear I didn't set out to promote this thing. I just use the stuff that I make because I make it for me first, and then if anyone else finds it useful, awesome. And then I have this sidechained or duct to the kick. Let me mute this for a second, because we also have this shaker that I've modified a bit. And I'm also using the pumper to duct to the kick. That's our foundation. To build on that foundation, I've got an instance of Jura with this modified preset. I can raise the cutoff over the course of the intro, and that'll become relevant in a second. And then I've got it pumped. So let's bring that in. That's a pretty solid foundation to start on. Now let's get to what actually started this whole thing. This may be surprising to you, but this nerd, civil engineer, and music producer likes him some train sounds. So the last time I was in San Francisco, I recorded just a bunch of stuff on my phone. And wanted to see if I could build a track around those train sounds. And I've got quite a few more in here. Little things like that. I don't think I ended up using that one. I'm using this one as a riser. You'll hear that in a second. And also this one as a little fill. And I'll show you that in context in a second. And I'm like filtering this stuff in. So let's take a look at what I did to this sound. Some EQ. Some reverb. Some delay, and then a pumper. And trying to make this into a little hook, basically, drove the structure of the drop and also set the key of the track. So let me double this clip up a couple of times. And then I can use these other sounds I showed you a second ago as like a white noise whoosh. That sounds a little bit messy in isolation, which is why I wait till the drop is pretty dense to bring in that train sound, but I'm also going to double that up with an instance of tube synth. That sounds very similar to that chime that you heard from the actual sample, and that goes a long way towards cleaning things up, making the chime sound stick out more. And I actually really like this patch. I think it sounds really nice. So now the format is kind of set. I need a call and response drop with some kind of either long blah element or some staccato bass element. And then the little chime sound, go back to some sort of big intense element, and then some maybe different response. That's the structure. And I ended up doing both a long blah element and a short staccato element. So let's bring in our next important sound. This is a custom sample that I made. I don't actually remember what I made it with, but that doesn't really matter. So that's like kind of fun. It's maybe a little thin. And so what's really bringing it to life here is the frequency shifter. And I am automating both the frequency and the mix. And that one thing brings it to life. And then there's another version later on. do some kind of different automation the second time, which gives it this really nice warble that kind of reminds me of like older era AU5 if you're a Monster Cat and or dubstep listener. Then we fill that out with some reverb and then dunk it to the kick. I'm also distorting it a little bit with tube drive, and then I swap between that element and this element. This one also has some automated frequency shifter on it. So if you want to hear where we're at so far, what we've built up to, and that last element is our final response. So you have a call, a response of that train chime, another call, and a different response. And this is another sound from my $5 sample pack. I swear I'm not trying to plug it that much. That's just how it worked out, which is like awfully convenient, but we'll take what we can get. So this, without the filter involved, sounds like this. Kind of a fun little distorted sound with a little bit of reverb and pumping. And then I'm literally just automating the cutoff until I got something I liked. And it took a bit of finagling, but ultimately I ended up with a fun little filter pattern that complements the rhythm. So that's the main idea, but it sounds kind of empty. So let's bring in, I've got a duplicate here, our Jura bass. So this is the same bass patch I showed you earlier, except I'm automating the filter cutoff. There's a lot of automation going on this track. I kind of resisted doing automation on the MPC for quite a while because it's kind of a pain, but the results it gets are absolutely worth it, even if it meant drawing some janky curves repeatedly until I got something that was even somewhat listenable. The other thing that this track is doing is giving us 16 bars of material, because I've got this little turnaround for the second repetition, which sounds like this, with a little bit of filter cutoff movement as well. So a solid foundation of some drums and a staccato bass, plus some train sounds, some bois sounds, and then another staccato bass with a bunch of automation. That goes a long way towards just raising the energy level and making this feel full and exciting. Now we can fill in all the gaps because there's just a bunch of dead space that I want to fill with little bass one shots and percussion. So I've muted most of the stuff. I'm just going to keep some of the percussive elements. So things like this actually took a good amount of finagling. It's a pretty simple bass one shot, but it's got a bunch of effects, including ring mod and tube drive. So here's with it ring mod off. Then we add non-linear reverb, makes it more of a percussive element, some actual reverb, distort it, and then get rid of all those lows. And that serves to follow up all our big cacophonous noises. I also have little elements like this. This is another thing I just recorded with my phone in the train station that I've turned into a percussion with some volume automation and reverb. Another little synthy element. That I've made sound a bit different. Another Jura element that I tested out for a staccato bass and decided I didn't like, but I didn't dislike it enough to get rid of it. So I've just layered it very subtly for part of the drop. It's just a nice extra little texture. I can also do fun little rhythms with a couple of bass one shots together. That fills in another gap that you'll hear in a second. So now that I've shown you those elements in isolation, hear how they all just fit together like a little puzzle. I tend to overshoot making these things busy. In this case, I think this is kind of just the right amount of a bunch of disparate elements that hopefully form a patchwork greater than the sum of its parts. Hopefully you could hear that other little kind of alarm sound in there, just very subtly. And now that we've got this kind of full hook that is just a bunch of elements all working in tandem. We can raise the energy level one more time with a ride cymbal and open hi-hat. So this is a pretty simple little hi-hat, just 4 on the floor, following the kick. And then a 909 hi-hat, the classic. All those little elements together gives us this. I think this track is really fun, and I'm glad that some of you folks did too, so thanks for asking me how I made it. If you'd like an in-depth walkthrough of clip launching on the MPC, you can check this out up over here. And if you'd like some more dance music production on the MPC, boy howdy, I've got you covered up over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.